Well, thank you, Joshua. It is such a pleasure to be here. My name is Sandy Carter, and I am Amazon Web Services Vice President for Public Sector Partners and Programs. I've been with Amazon for over 3 years. I've had an exciting time. I was brought in to create our enterprise workload business, so I got to build some incredible things, both from a service side as well as some partnerships that we've introduced. Before I worked for Amazon Web Services, I was the CEO of an interesting startup. We did kind of a Myers-Briggs for companies to match innovation tactics. So this whole area of innovation and building is very much something that is very close to my heart. Before that, I ran AI and ML as well as IoT in the business and in the industry for IBM. Now, many of you know that AWS is very customer obsessed. And even our events, we like our events to be customer obsessed. And that's why I'm really excited about today. We're here with the Army Future Command, with the Air Force, with the Texas Military Department. Some of our great partners like Deloitte and Accenture are here with us today. And I think that's what makes a great event. You're going to hear from all different perspectives on topics from DevSecOps to, women in tech. So it's going to be really exciting. And we're really appreciative that Capital Factory has brought us here and brought us all together. Capital Factory does a really nice job of bringing vendors in and commercial customers in, as well as some of the areas like the Army and the Air Force all together so that we can be stronger and better together. I was recently at a council meeting, and we had everything from startup competition to really assess some new innovation and technology that these startups were bringing to the table, to a great discussion about what does the Army need, what's the future of the Air Force, and what kind of technology needs were there. And one of the things I really love about Capital Factory and working with them is that they're very much focused on diversity of thought. They're women in diversity group with Capital Factory, but just also ensuring at all times that diversity is taken into account. And I believe very strongly that diversity drives innovation, so it's a perfect fit. Yesterday, you saw Andy and General Murray speak, and I just wanted to double click on a couple of key points that they made that I think will be useful throughout these sessions. One, they talked about AWS is for builders, and I told you that's one of the main reasons that I came to AWS was to build. Amazon has been building for 13 years at the broadest and the deepest set of services. So whether you're looking at using machine learning or AI or quantum, we are always innovating on those services, always working backwards from our customers so that our builders are building the things that really matter. And that is true for our government customers too. We want our government customers to have access to all of the same tools that are available to our commercial customers and all those other things that are required. My team started a program called ATO, Authority to Operate. And what it does is it helps startups and partners to get their FedRAMP certification, something that's really important for government customers, or just helping customers move into our GovCloud. These things are essential to the business. And if you're a startup out there, we love startups. I told you at the beginning that I was a founder and a CEO, so I know exactly what you're going through. And I love working with startups, and we really grow with our startups. We find that when startups start with us when they're small, they grow up with us because of the credits, but more than the credits, the go-to-market, the mentoring that I know I needed when I was starting my company, as well as the technology. We've helped tens of thousands of startups. And in 2018, we gave away over $500 million of AWS credits. So we really want you to engage with us across both commercial and public sector. And public sector to us is very broad. It's education, it's healthcare, it's obviously state and local government, DoD, national security. Also, we just launched our space independent business unit. So check out that as well. We support over 7,000 different government agencies, over 10,000 different academic areas, over 25,000 different nonprofits. And equally as important to us is defense, intelligence, national security. I just talked to Dr. Portia Crowe from the Army. We love supporting all of our government, especially those who serve us. Purpose is really important to us. So today we're going to be talking about taking cloud to the edge. It's such an exciting topic. You know, Gartner has come up with this new terminology called distributed cloud, about taking on-premises and edge devices to the public cloud. For us, it's all about edge computing. And edge computing just means that the computing is done at or near the source of data. The value prop is kind of obvious, right? You have lower latency because you're closer to the data. You have no network congestion because you're closer to the data. Amazon believes very strongly in the role of AWS and Edge, being very customer obsessed and very customer focused. We want to not only, though, talk about the technology of Edge and being at the tactical edge and all the things that come with that, the need for data, but we definitely want to hear from AWS customers about this and some of their mission challenges. So without further ado, let's get on to the meat of the program, which is hearing from these customers and partners of ours, really discuss what's happening and to challenge you to take some actions that may be different than what you're doing today. Again, thank you so much for coming today, and thank you to Capital Factory for hosting today's event. Let's get started. As all of you know, AWS is very committed to builders. That's one of the main reasons I came, was to come and build something new. And I know that's what all our startups and all our partners and all our customers out there are looking for as well. So because of that, we always want to start out being customer obsessed. So we are thrilled today to have Dr. Portia Crowe. And Dr. Crowe is the Chief Data Officer for the Army Future Command and Network Cross-Functional Team, which we will now call CFT as we go forward. So welcome, Dr. Crowe, or as you told me, I could call you Portia, I think, right?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited.
I am so excited too. Could you just give us maybe one or two words about your kind of your background and your history?
Sure. So as you said, my name is Portia Crowe. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the Network Cross-Functional Team, which is under Army Futures Command, that is headquartered at in Austin, Texas. My director is Major General Pete Gallagher. And just a little bit of the network CFT, if you don't mind, I'll go into a little bit of the introduction. In coordination with our key stakeholders, we deliver the Army a network that enables our Army to fight and win and dominate in a multi-domain environment by 2028. And we ensure that we're building the right network for the future Army to include our partnerships, industry, academia, and bringing in the innovation that allows us to be dominant in that space. We have 4 lines of effort that are key, I think, for this audience to understand a little bit more. One is integrating the network and transport, because we know without that integration and the convergence of those networks and transports, we can't do things like data and some of the other important initiatives that we have. Common operating environment, which is really converging a lot of our software and hardware in the tactical environment to include our sensors, data, applications, effects, integration. Also, a line of effort is interoperability with joint and coalition accessibility, because the Army doesn't fight alone. We need our partners in our relationships, and we have to be able to share data with our joint and coalition partners. And lastly, our mobile and survivable command posts. So in the small, agile team of experts that we have on the cross-functional team, we really rely on our team of teams across our science and technology, acquisition, our testing. We also have great partnerships with our other cross-functional teams under AFC to include the Artificial Intelligence Task Force. And again, our industry partners and our relationships are really key for us meeting our modernization priorities. In my current job as Chief Data Officer for the network, cross-functional team, Major General Gallagher realized that there is a great push on streamlining our data environment to support our warfighters. So he created this position within that team to kind of pull some of those entities and the partnerships together to make sure we have a clear roadmap moving forward. So a lot of that is in accordance with our DoD and our Army cloud and data strategies. And specifically for the Army's tactical environment, which I think we'll get into a little bit more. And just, I help ensure that we have the right investments, architecture, and the technologies to support those critical missions and to support what we're trying to do from the enterprise of the Army all the way down to the tactical edge.
Wow. So, Portia, that's a big job, and we all know how important data is. So I'm so glad that you're in that role today, for sure. So based on all of that you're talking about, I would love to know kind of your top 3 challenges that the CFT or that cross-functional team is facing. Is it, learning and understanding AI/ML? Is it the data, or is it something else? What kinds of things are you facing today?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, we have a lot of challenges, and I like to think that as we solve them, it may be for the current effort, future effort, but we want to stay, active with the community and ensure that as technology progresses, that we have a plan. So we're remaining flexible in our solutions. I would just start with like cloud computing in general. Where we're allowing on-demand access from anywhere at any time, sharing a pool of computing resources. But in the tactical environment, you have people and things constantly moving. We're setting up, we're tearing down equipment, we're reestablishing and establishing connections at different locations, such as mobile devices, headsets, servers, vehicles. So we have to be able to operate in a disconnected, intermittent, limited, and unreliable environment. With that alone comes a lot of challenges. And so when I kind of think through the problem statement, I'm thinking access to an enterprise data cloud may not be available where we need timely data at the device level edge nodes. So we also have to be able to accelerate the speed of decision making and deliver those capabilities to increase targeting, fires decisions. And for example, what my mantra is, having the right data at the right place at the right time. So some of my challenges that we're facing is we want as much automation as we can and as much intelligence to the edge that we can accommodate per the resources that we have. Now, I know that's easy to say, but how do we overcome some of the bandwidth deficits and the other obstacles as I've laid out the tactical environment? So we're designing and developing with the mindset of sending not all data, but only the data that we need, and doing the heavy computations offloaded or preloaded on edge devices so that we can filter where we need the data and how much of that data do we really need to meet the soldier's mission. I also would say efficiency of compute capacity built into our software and the equipment. And so as we look at industry offerings of containerization, elasticity, scaling for efficiencies, I think are very important. Some of the ilities that come to mind are flexibility, portability, simplicity, commonality. And so as we utilize things like containers at the enterprise, I also want to be able to utilize those containers down at the edge. And so kind of reuse where we need to and only be unique where we need to. I also believe a challenge is management controls and tools. So we need tools that are easy and secure and to be able to have good configuration hygiene as we have a very distributed architecture, and so as we have many multiple nodes, sensors, clouds, we have to be able to manage all of that effectively and share those resources across the network. And so, and I'd like to hear some of your thoughts, Sandy, actually. It was a great question. I hope I captured the essence of it.
Yeah, you did. It was really interesting. I think you first talked about automation, and Amazon also believes very heavily in automation because that's kind of what our portfolio does. We have 10 data movement centers. We have 13 analytics services. We have 24 machine learning, 18 security and governance. And all of those are about how do we help customers like yourself move data? How do we ensure that that's automated as you're going forward? You also spent time talking about the edge, and I love the edge, but just so that folks on the line, in case you don't know what we're talking about. So the edge is really simple. It's just about getting the data and the compute as near to each other as possible, which means that then you don't have to worry about latency, or you shouldn't have to worry about latency. You have that ease of network congestion because you don't really flow over the network as much. So there's a lot of value in having things closer to the edge, as well as just being able to run disconnected. And that's, again, something that we are very much pushing the boundaries of the cloud on. We built services to enable customers like yourself to innovate at the edge, like Greengrass, which is software that goes on devices and allows them to have that compute and storage that you can process data and take action. Or 5G, we created Amazon Wavelength to get you 5G. Or, in some instances, I don't know if you've seen our snow cone. Have you seen our snow cone yet? Mm-hmm. It's 5 pounds, so it can fit in your hand or in a mailbox, but it has all the power of that data that you might need in a disconnected environment. So I think this utilization of on-off premises, being able to deliver tactical edge applications, and just accelerating that automation, it's really where we believe that compute is going. And I'm really happy to see that we're kind of on the same page with that particular focus.
Yes, and I believe that, we focus a lot on the technology, and sometimes it's not the technology that is the issue, right? So, we've got to think through the whole ecosystem of training our soldiers. So if we do bring a new piece of, equipment, does the user have the right skill set to be able to do this? How long is it going to take him to do things? And so as we're trying to get faster decision making, especially in our targeting and fires cycle, we want to just make sure that we're thinking through that, the policies, the security, the training. And so, we can have multiple in that space and multiple vendors playing in that space, and we have to be able to work together as an ecosystem to ensure that we've got end-to-end, productivity and optimize what we have. So.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that a lot of times people do forget to think about all of the softer things. The training, the governance, the tiger teams that you need. So I do think that all those are important as well. And that really leads me to our second question, which is, how is the Army under your leadership transforming as it adapts to this new cloud and data-centric environment? That's kind of a new thing, right?
Yes. And so I can tell you, I've been in the Army almost 17 years. Industry prior to that. I don't want to date myself, but I've been around in different, in the science and technology community. I've been in acquisition and now at being at the network CFT. I can tell you that it is really an exciting time. I mean, we have really the senior leaders and our organization has really embraced thinking outside the box, reaching out to the startup companies, thinking through what does not even, 2028, but even just the nearer future really look like, and how can we, change the ways that we're doing things and think about different problem sets. And so as we look at our Army cloud strategy and our Army data plans, we have really given a lot of thought into how do we do these things faster, quicker, using experimentations to have that learn and informing cycle as we push, new software and hardware out to the field. But I would say that together with the Army and industry and even academia, we have proven that cloud capabilities can improve our situational awareness decision making. And I think if we continue to design and build with continuous monitoring and increase, we can increase our security footprint. I think we've proven that. We've enabled a lot more encryption techniques within that space. And then, even as we look at cloud computing at the tactical edge, we have a lot of great technologies that allow the sharing of those resources of workloads and lessen the burden on our server computations, our storage, just even the physical footprint, that the soldiers have to, configure and manage and set up and tear down. And then, just ultimately supporting, a faster decision cycle to the soldiers. So I think we've made a lot of inroads. We're taking the best practices from industry and looking at innovation to incorporate a lot of the process, methodology, and the techniques. And I do want to add in, I never want to forget interoperability with our joint partners, right? I think that, we never fight alone, that we have to embrace and we have to share the right data at the right security levels as we work towards, embracing our digital transformation. And I think that embracing the flexibility to manage new data sets as we work through the complexity trade-offs is really important for us.
And I think Portia, a lot of, you sound like you're ahead of a lot of companies, because as I do EBCs, executive briefings, a lot of people will come in and they'll say, I want to focus on my machine learning strategy. I want to focus on artificial intelligence. But until you really have a great data strategy and you have that interoperability, you'll never get to really valuable use of AI and ML. So I'm really excited that, as part of the Army Future Command and the CFT, that you guys are thinking through data and that you are thinking through that interoperability, because I think it's so crucial as you move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that we have laid the foundation of what that data strategy looks like, not just even within the Army, but across our joint services. So the chief data officers get together, they meet, we have data boards within the Army that we're moving towards, enhancing our data dictionaries and our data roadmap. And how does that look, the standards, making sure that we, just even down to the lowest level, utilize APIs in the right way and make sure that we can share data, securely across the network. And we're not afraid to make changes within the architecture. We're upgunning, the skill sets of our military and civilian workforce. So I think holistically, we've got a really great strategy. We're always fighting for investments and budget to make sure that we can do the great things that we want to do. And as we think through that, pull industry in with us as we go down this road, because we are learning so much from what industry has done commercially, and then how do we apply that to military?
Sounds like a normal corporation, like everybody's fighting for budget. Hey, yep. I'm curious. I know yesterday, and I'm hoping that everybody saw General Murray and Andy Jassy, the AWS CEO, speak yesterday. They spent some time on COVID and the impact that COVID has had. And I know on a lot of our state governments, it's really accelerated their move to digital transformation. I'm curious about the impact that it's had on CFT. Has it sped you up? Has it slowed you down? The combination? Portia, what do you see the impacts of COVID having on you right now?
I would say, under these conditions of COVID, it is a great test to our Army about how well we are, doing, with really just resiliency, right? So how can we continue our mission, really make the right trade-offs of what we do, prioritize what we do, and move out, right? And be creative about some of those solutions. So this is another point where I believe relationships matter, right? So we work closely with the community to include C5ISR, our acquisition partners, our industry partners, on utilizing our tactical systems to respond to COVID needs. So we have managed to use, maybe take the same system that we would push forward into a fight, but also be able to use it locally at home and adapt to using our systems a little bit differently. We have also communicated our impacts on our industry base to include supply chain and support our critical mission, with the help of our senior leaders and letting them know what are the impacts on the industry base. But I can tell you that, overall, we remain focused on embracing that creativity. And I think some of our agile thinking that is due to COVID. And we continue to support our soldiers. And I think, like I said, the talent, as much as we can do virtually, so if we can train, military and civilians on some of our, latest modernized tools that we have, especially in the DevSecOps arena. A lot of this can be done virtually that we found where before I think we used to think we had to be in a classroom with the teacher providing us that hands-on experience. But, we've, of course, even in the real world, a lot of virtual learning is taking place. So I think that, we're just trying to be creative and prioritize what needs to get done. And I'd be interested in finding, what you thought and how you guys have adapted also your organization to COVID.
Yeah, it's really, I think, fascinating that working in public sector, COVID really helped to accelerate a lot of the work that we were doing in the same things that you're talking about, remote work. How do we help get people up and going on the cloud faster? Remote learning. We work with over 25,000 different academic and nonprofits who all needed to now do remote learning. Even call centers, how do I find out where my supplies are, whether that be food or hospital supplies or troops, right? How do I know where everybody is when everything has now changed? So COVID, you never want to celebrate a crisis, but I would say that the positives from the crisis have been that there's been an acceleration to digital transformation, which I think is going to be a powerful benefit to DoD, to Army Future Command, to our state government, local governments, educational institutions. I think it will be a really powerful move in the long term for sure.
Totally agree. And I also believe optimizing what we already have. We have so many assets, but we, kind of train ourselves to thinking about using those assets in one way, and I think thinking outside the box and being innovative, this, pandemic has really taught us how to do that a little differently and really partner closer. So, what traditionally might have taken us a little bit longer to work through some of the acquisition and the contracting, I think we have found ways to speed up some of those cycles. So a lot of great improvements. I hope we don't lose that, but I think that we are learning, and you're right, definitely a faster track to digital transformation.
Yeah. So now that we're looking at that, I know a lot of our startups, we have a huge array of amazing partners, some of which have sponsored today, Deloitte and Accenture. And then just, companies who really want to work with you guys. What advice would you give them today?
Great question. I would say probably first and foremost that technology is great. We rely on it so very heavily, but we operate as a system of systems. And so I believe understanding how your particular solution integrates into the bigger picture is crucial because, like I said, we don't operate alone. We don't fight alone. Your system will not, for the most part, it will be connected to a larger internet, if you will, of things. And so how do you take your solution and just understand, the environment that you need to play in, who you're going to touch, what your everything from the standards that you use to how you're distributing, synchronizing data, doing data analytics, and think about the end user. We have users on how to use your solutions. And so the easier that we make it, the better. So just thinking about the larger picture of how your solution fits in into that system of systems, I think is really critical. I also think about commercial solutions. We're often, have the mindset of let's take commercial solutions. I think we have to really think through how do we do that and apply that to military applicability. And so, like I said, I love the thought of just be unique where you need to be. But a lot of commercial solutions don't really apply to, certain solution sets. We have to be, mindful of how do we take something that works great on the enterprise, and then how does that work in a disconnected, intermittent, environment. And most of the time, but that will mean changing your system and making sure that you design and develop your system, in the beginning with those things in mind. And then also don't underestimate how big the Army is, right? So please take into consideration scalability, and then your expectations for, if we love a solution and instead of like 50, you're thinking 50, we may need 100. How do you scale that? And then I would say think about your partnerships, because there are partners that have the ability to scale that, that you may not have. So I think partnering correctly, with thinking of scalability, not just of your technology, but then how are you going to produce it and scale that out.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So interoperability, make sure you're seeing yourself as part of a whole, not being the only thing, making sure you can scale up because you guys are huge. You're huge, huger than even I thought when I studied before I came to this interview. And also making sure that you have that leading edge innovation, right? You guys are looking for the future, not the past. And so making sure that comes into play too. Now, the next big question that I always get, and I just came into public sector about 9 months ago, is the mechanisms for contracting. So what suggestion would you have on programs or vehicles or opportunities to partner with you guys? What recommendations would you use on kind of pathing that out and getting to the right person, if you would, or the right program?
Oh, that's a great question, Sandy. And as many technical exchanges that I've done, in my career, we get a lot of the same questions. It's probably easier for a big company to break in and find, the strongholds. Most likely they're already working within the military or the DoD. But we do have several mechanisms in place. So we always conduct continuous market research. We actually even have a chief warrant officer who is our chief of market research for the network CFT. So to work directly with us, we actually have a great point of contact entry. We meet with industry, for an hour or however long it takes, and we really try to understand, the technology. We give guidance back, and then, because we are a team of teams, it may not fit what we're trying to do specifically at our time. So we will, have that company reach out and give them points of contact, whether it's science and technology, could be testing, it could be another CFT that could be interested in that technology, and also our program managers on our acquisition side. So we really try to, bring in, our partners to see where that mess, and sometimes it may not meet our need. And so we try to give advice. So having the point of contact for our chief of market research, I think, is really important. Most of our partners have a point of contact that we can get into. So doing continuous market research, we know things change all the time. We're trying to be, agile in the way that we kind of move across some of the, our big portfolio industry solutions. We also do technical exchange meetings with our partners. I think we have had at least one or two per year. And so that gives industry an insight into where our biggest challenges will be, what capability set, we're talking about in the larger grand scheme of fielding some of those solutions. We also, during those industry engagements, provide details on prototyping and possible contracts that allow us to determine the maturity of that technology or possible inclusion into future large-scale assessments. We also leverage our S&T partners with our what we call a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, or CRADA. So that allows industry to partner formally with the government and be able to assess technology. And like I said, we do several engagements just even around the Army. You know, we have several technology searches. We partner with you know, the other services to be able to do those outreach events, and we really try to publicize you know, some of our, you know, what our needs right now, as well as what we might need in the future. And places like the Army Applications Lab, Capital Factory. So we really do try to get out and expand our reach and do the right outreach.
Awesome. That's great.
So, Sandy, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah, I'd love it.
So from your lens, how can the Army better take advantage of and integrate proven commercial capabilities in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know that you're doing some, and like with your director of research, but the first one, I would say, really falls into an Amazon leadership principle, which is learn and be curious. We have so many use cases that are coming out, and they're coming out rapidly now, especially with what's happening with COVID, of new areas and new focus, from quantum to AI, ML, to what we're doing with IoT. The industry has seen a 400% increase in the use of IoT and sensors, which you would imagine with COVID. But we're learning a lot about that, and we've got a lot of new use cases coming out. So I think one is what you're doing in a broader scale, looking out there to see what's available and what others are doing. Even, I know you guys attend some of the conferences. We just had a public sector summit online, but even going to conferences like reInvent, where you're going to see not just public sector customers, but also the broader set of commercial customers and what they're doing. I would say that would be the first one. The second, I really like, because you talked about doing experimentation. And we at Amazon believe very powerfully in experimenting, trying something out, doing a proof of concept. You know, maybe starting out with one of our startups and trying a new area, or, you know, working with us on a particular new area directly, or with one of our partners, I think is another way to adopt some of these commercial concepts in. I know that you have to, we also have to ensure that they're ready to go for you. So identifying for vendors like ourselves, some of those solutions that you want to have FedRamped. We have an authority to hire or operate ATO program that we help startups and partners get that FedRAMP certification, which I know is so crucial for working on many of these projects, or to get them moved into GovCloud. So I think having you identify some of those ahead of time would be interesting. And then I think the fourth and final area would be to do some big visioning with vendors or your partners. So we have something called Envision Engineering. And what Envision Engineering does is it enables us to brainstorm together, to use some of the processes that Amazon uses, writing press releases, thinking really big, and, you know, not just about today or tomorrow, but what's going to happen 5 years out. And then we help you envision that and create not just the technology, but the user interface and the elements around it that you would need to be successful. So just listening to you, it sounds like you've got some of the pieces that you're already doing that with today. And I think just adding in and getting that closer, tighter partnership would be a great way to leverage some more of those commercial technologies and approaches as well, right?
Definitely. Great point. I do think that we have a great, you know, outreach. You know, we can always do better. Like I said, we are such a large Army. Things do change pretty quickly. We do utilize a lot of the social media avenues, especially now with COVID, I know that we can't really be face to face and do trade shows and things like that. But I think virtual, just collaboration and the way that, like we have today is really key that we continue to maintain and keep the information flowing both ways.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that virtual is a great equalizer, right? Whereas maybe before you wouldn't have felt comfortable going to Vegas. Now that we have everything virtually and online and available, it opens up a lot of doors, I think, to everybody. And we appreciate and love the partnership that we have with you guys. You guys are some of the very best in this particular space. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Portia.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, I think for some of the startup companies too, that may not want to invest a lot of travel time and money, this is another way that we could collaborate a little bit closer.
Yeah, in fact, Capital Factory had me judge virtually a startup competition. It's amazing. They did such a great job at having the startups pitch online. So we should do something like that as well.
I agree. I think that, we as a community have some really great thoughts. I think if we can filter, some of those, the way that we can utilize, our technology now that, the world is changing. We've got some really great opportunities to be able to reach out in different ways that we probably haven't thought about before.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, yesterday, General Murray and Andy Jassy again were talking about initiatives to help that user and developers understand more. I'm curious to maybe double click on that a little bit more with what you guys are doing and maybe sharing some of the details and the techniques that you guys are using at the Army Future Command and CFT.
Yeah, I would say that we are following the trends and optimizing where we can by utilizing our, industry best practices and technology. So we are looking at industry to really set the pace together with our S&T community, and how do we keep continuing to push the ball forward. I think, we've got, vision for 20 months. I think that we can capitalize on a lot of great technology and what the future, even with what we've seen in academia, and how do we bring, that into, how do we start changing, looking at the infrastructure and the architecture and the platforms that we're using. And like I said, making today's current technology flexible enough that we're not throwing everything out when those new technologies come in. So we're really looking at industry, academia to set the pace for what the vision looks like in the future, and how do we bring that technology and capability into that environment. I think things like industry does very well with DevSecOps that we're not only embracing within the Army, but also with our Air Force partners. I think utilizing the processes and the methodology and the great tools that they have. I think training our military and civilians to think that way and use that, and then wrap a great technology, methodology around it, whether it's agile, lean, or extreme programming, to really, produce faster, more efficient and effective software is really where we're leaning in on that. I would also say that exploiting what industry already knows and is producing in terms of 5G capabilities, quantum, multi-level security is a really big area for us, especially as we look at sharing data with our joint and coalition partners. I believe the artificial intelligence arena is ripe with, of innovation of how we can utilize that, not only where we have, connected, reliable comms, but also down at the edge where it could be, intermittent and not as reliable. And then, what's near and dear to what we do, really for applications and data is how do we, find that compute and storage, utilization that really allows us to do our mission, make decisions faster, especially when you're talking about, sensor to shooter and, enabling that user to have the right data at the right time, at the right place. So I would say, given our goals of having an efficient and effective network, data interoperability, we want to produce the best value and outcomes for our soldiers and our end users. So we are embracing, the industry, the trending and the new innovations. And I think the partnering with the S&T community allows us to look out a little bit further. And so, I love doing, things like this with you and other partners, is because this is how we learn. This is how we trade ideas. And, the follow-ups from this are really the important part, right? And really digging in and finding out what you guys are thinking and what you're doing in this environment is really key.
Yeah, it was interesting when you were talking about DevSecOps. I've heard that now more from commercial, and it started with you guys in DoD and Army Future Command, and I know we have a session later on just on DevSecOps. That's a great example of how public sector and DoD's kind of set the bar that's now being adopted by commercial. So I thought that was kind of cool as well.
Yes, I'm really excited about that. I have learned and have experience in DevSecOps through industry with our vendors and the way we partner. We've put out, we fielded software using this before, so it's not new to us. I think what we're trying to do now is really standardize it and make it common. And like I said, only be unique where we have to. We do have mission spaces that require us to be unique. And then learn and adapt, everything from the way we do acquisition and contracting to onboarding new vendors that might have a great idea and can come into our space and see the services and our libraries and our APIs that we have to enable them to, produce integrated capabilities and give that back to the government. So really exciting space. I think we have a lot of opportunity. And again, we're just trying to keep pace and modernize and digitize the transformation of what some of our, environment here.
Awesome. So our next question, we're going to talk a little bit about a subject that's very passionate for both of us, which is women in tech, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that area. Would you like to start us out?
Yeah, I would love to get your thoughts about what do you see as the challenges, maybe even opportunities that you're seeing for women, and how can we encourage more females to join STEM-related professions?
Yeah, so I think it's really cool that 2 female tech leaders are on the call today. And both very passionate about how we take that next step so that this is not that this is a norm, right? This is the new norm, I guess you would say, is to have lots of women doing this. So some of the challenges I see are first of all, the pipeline, right? How do we get more women into the pipeline itself? I'm a big proponent of Girls Who Code, Black Girls Code, Hispanic Who Code, because they start early on. In fact, my daughter, I have 2 daughters, started with Girls Who Code, which really got her excited about Python and the potential that was there, making it interesting and fun. I think is really important, making sure we have that pipeline that continues to grow. Portia, when I went to college to study computer science, there was only about 20% women. And I was hoping that when my daughter went to school, the numbers would have changed. And they really haven't so far. We do need to do more in that younger age. I also, go ahead. Do you want to add something?
Sorry. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah. And that's all, that's getting everybody excited about technology. The second thing that I see is this, kind of career progression. So as I mentor women, especially in tech, I see a lot of the bro culture that emerges itself. And so I think we need to build inclusive environments. And I know that has now kind of taken a life of its own on. I'm hoping that it won't be a moment, but will be a movement, that we start making the work environment included enough to where people ask, what do you think? Not just kind of bully over it. And really take advantage of diversity. I believe that diversity yields greater innovation. So I think that it's a really powerful tool. And then the third big thing that I think is a challenge is just, I believe very strongly in you've got to see it to be it. Mm-hmm. So you're such an inspiration. You tell me don't say doctor, but I wanted to say doctor because I want the next generation to know you can be a doctor. Here's a great role model. So I think you do have to see it to be it. I think we need more role models, and I think there are more out there. We just need to make them more visible as they move forward. I do think we're working on a lot of these. I do think that things like Girls in Tech, who teaches women not only coding, but the way to interact and the way to have confidence and the way to really help drive that change is going to be really important. I think putting up more role models is going to be really crucial as we move forward. And just doing things like hackathons. I have a friend who is the CEO of a startup. She's probably one of the most visionary women that I know. And she's created these little robotics kits. So you can either use it to make jewelry and fashion, or you can use it to make a robot that moves. It really hits like every single interest area. It's not segmented to one area. Mm-hmm. And even at Amazon Web Services, to teach machine learning now, you can have a little deep racer car, which is 1/18 the size of a real race car that has IoT and ML, or you can do a camera, or you can do a deep composer, which is music. I love the fact that we're starting to see some progression in the way that you learn as well. That's mm-hmm. more diverse in its approach. Do you agree with that?
I am so passionate about everything that you said, and being a woman in this field, and actually I moonlight as a professor of cybersecurity. So I have had the pleasure of teaching Girl Scouts come in. We do a role play on cybersecurity. But the one thing that I do see is hitting the K through 12 education system in the area for STEM, getting our children started earlier and giving them the confidence. So I think a lot of the hands-on, my daughter too has built drones and flew them, and it thinks it's really cool, and I love that. So giving her that hands-on experience and not making this nebulous thing is really key. So I would continue to, tell our younger generation and hopefully our educators that, we have to start early. We have to make an impression early. And we have to give them the hands-on capabilities to be able to do that, whether that's, programs during the summer or after school curriculums. But just, I think giving them the confidence to say, it's not an unknown thing. And, if you like it and you're having fun, then keep going. And there's opportunities for them to do that. So I love being involved in this. And so anywhere I can help to progress the field I'm in.
Great. So thank you. So you know what, if you're a young woman out there or you're an experienced woman out there, reach out to either myself or Portia as well. Dr. I'm going to say Dr. Crowe, we do have to start wrapping up. So what I'd like to do is to have you leave us with 3 points. So if you wanted everyone to take away kind of 3 things from your just action-packed fireside chat today, what would those be?
I would say, I do want to say thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed the session. I hope that it was really helpful for our audience to, really kind of understand where we're going in the data and cloud and some of our initiatives. So first, I would say the Army has a vision. We know where we need to be. We have a detailed plan and timeline of how we're going to get there, and we are being accountable for our progress. To make significant progress, we are maintaining our relationship with industry, our partners, and academia. So, I would say that first. Second, I would say that we cannot achieve our goals without our partners, right? And so I do want to continue the outreach. We have like I said, a market research person on our team. There's a lot of us that, you know, we do meet and engage with industry and just doing continual outreach with the community and keep you up to date with what we're doing through our technical exchange meetings and other venues. And lastly, just to kind of round things out, I would leave you with a couple thoughts. Costs, right? So I would say cost of your solutions, think about that. As you scale, what are those licensing costs? Intellectual property is something I would also ask you to think about. That's always a challenge of what you want to maintain versus the government and how do you work that transaction. So IP is really important to the government. And so I would say think about that up front. Also, security practices and the way that that you do code supply chain. You know, we have to understand take what risk what we take on, and making sure that we see ourselves in that whole entire end-to-end process. So those are just some additional things I would ask you to think about up front and incrementally throughout the process, so that when you get to the end point, it's not a big, you know, oh, wow, this is going to cost me a lot more money, or I should have designed or developed things a little bit differently in the beginning. So hopefully that kind of just wraps up some of my thoughts there.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Portia Crowe. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us today at this fireside chat. So if you're sitting there today, make sure that you do take into account the great points that she made throughout this session. Make sure you're thinking about your innovation. If you're a startup, make sure you're thinking about your interoperability, how you fit into the whole, the cost that she talked about, and just make sure that you remember the inspiration that she's brought to the table. I want to thank you for your service as well. This is a chance, I think, for all of us to bond together and do something that's bigger than all of us, is to really help out the Army as we move forward. I want to thank as well Josh Baer for the great sponsorship here with Capital Factory, helping all these startups to provide some of these great new ideas as well. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the time that you spent today. And audience, thank you guys for joining us and sticking with us throughout this session. Thank you.
Thank you.